Let's talk about the British government's response to the coronavirus. There are many, many criticisms of its policies and the way it's handled this pandemic. All in all, it has been so far a complete disaster, and it's allowed Britain to become infected severely with this virus when it could have much earlier restricted travel from high-risk countries. But let's talk about the main criticisms of its response. Number one, it didn't close the borders quick enough. And in fact, it still hasn't closed the borders quick enough. People were coming from China well into February and Italy without any proper checks. This is completely ridiculous when they're coming from high-risk countries. Countries like Mongolia, Russia, that share a border with China, close the borders very quickly, and if their numbers are true, they have received a very small amount of infections because they took very strong, stringent policies. So the first criticism would be, we haven't controlled travel into our country from high-risk countries like Spain, Italy, China, and we were allowing people. In fact, yesterday, as far as I'm aware, 20 planes landed from the United States. The United States is now the epicenter of the virus. It has it very, very bad. And yet we're still allowing people to travel into the country without closing the borders. That is wrong. Just because we can put them into quarantine doesn't mean to say that the virus wouldn't spread, because no quarantine measures are perfect. Number two, the Conservative government did not take the threat of this virus seriously enough in January and February. When the reports were coming out, many people in the Tory party were commenting and were very agnostic towards the severity of this virus. And so you can kind of see their laissez-faire attitude in like Dominic Cummings' comments regarding, does it really matter if a few more pensioners die? We can't crash the whole economy. That's their kind of attitude in general to these types of things. But they didn't take it seriously enough, and so they're massively underprepared. Number three, the flawed herd immunity strategy. Everywhere else in the world, including Europe, were trying to contain this virus. Although it may be true that herd immunity is ultimately a beneficial thing to have eventually, it is not right that we should sacrifice hundreds of thousands of people to achieve it. Letting the virus run its course in Britain, if the death rate from the World Health Organization is correct, and obviously we have to be cautious about that, would have potentially meant over 200,000 people would have their lives ended, and not only that, but hundreds of thousands more would have required hospitalisation, which is why the vast majority of countries in the world tried to significantly contain the virus by closing the borders, doing mass testing, mass gatherings and so forth. But Britain was very, very late in the game to carry these out. And initially, the government mentioned that it's going for this herd immunity, but it didn't fully analyse the data, even if it were true that it was a legitimate policy and not just an excuse for why they hadn't prepared significantly. Because for most viruses, where we do achieve herd immunity, like mumps, measles and so forth, we get vaccinated. We develop a vaccine that defeats the virus. But of course, there isn't a vaccine currently for COVID-19. And so it seems like they hadn't analysed what they really meant by herd immunity. And without sufficient information on how deadly this disease really is, it was